Hi, hello. This is Michał Olszewski and Arek Hajduk, welcoming you to the newest episode of Venture Central. You can be a little confused because we used to call ourselves Zapytaj VC, but now with new year, new name, I hope you like it. It's gonna cover more, not only Polish VC world. As you noticed, this is a part of the Roadtrip CE series. So yes, we're road tripping across the CE. And today, together with Arek, we have a very special guest for you that will tell us about a country neighboring Poland and its VC landscape and startup landscape. Arek, what can we say about it?
So
What's the
next up
country?
on our road trip is Ukraine.
All right.
Can you show us the map?
Yeah.
Thank
Yes.
you.
This is the whole
So
map of Ukraine.
yeah, exactly. Venture Central road trip Ukraine episode. Before we will jump to our guest, I will tell you a bit about notable startups and notable VCs in a country. As you can see, there is a bunch of pretty well-known names. I'm sure that some of them you didn't know that they are connected to Ukraine. I was
Those are
surprised to learn, for
just
example.
attention, just a small addition. These are all unicorns or near unicorns. So this is
Sunicorns. That's
Sunicorns. Yes,
Sunicorn.
those are Sunicorns. So the number is pretty huge considering the situation Ukraine is in right now.
Yeah, and there is also a bunch of notable funds. So first of all, we have Ukrainian funds or Ukrainian-based funds, including Flyer One Ventures, which will be the fund that we will come back to in a moment. Then there are other sources of funding, I should say. Seeds of Bravery. Michał, what is Seeds of Bravery? Because
Yeah,
it's not a VC.
I can explain a little more. It's not a VC fund. Seeds of Bravery. It's a European activity or a European program funded by the European Union. I have the pleasure to work specifically for Seeds of Bravery, and this is a program where over 200 Ukrainian startups are receiving grants, pretty nice grants that enables them to grow, scale, and be ready for the major next steps of funding from the real VCs. And the list here, as the list goes on here, you can see those are the names of the VC funds that are active in Ukraine, but they are not Ukrainian per se. They are based outside Ukraine. Some of the names you probably know from our other episodes. You can see some Polish funds there. But we will discuss this a little deeper with our guest in a few seconds, and let's introduce the guest. Right, that's the right moment for it.
Yeah.
But no, before we do it, please remember to support us. There's you can scan this code, and this if you order supplements from GitLab that way, you get a nice. Discount. Yes, the discount is pretty nice, and we get some cash out of it. So yes, please scan the code right now, and let's see the guest. Who is it?
So today we will be speaking with Elena Mazhuha. She's a partner at Flyer One Ventures, one of the funds that was mentioned in the previous slide. Elena is based in Warsaw. Flyer One is active also in Poland, so we cover also this part of it. We welcome you and invite you to listen to the whole conversation with Elena.
Have fun.
Hello everyone. My name is Elena. I am one of the partners at Flyer One Ventures. We focus on founders from Central Eastern Europe and Ukraine building global products. I'm happy to be today on Venture Central podcast.
Welcome,
Hi.
Elena. Elena, let's start with the basics. You're a Ukrainian venture capitalist now living in Warsaw, which is great, and you moved, to countries just outside. Tell us a bit about Ukrainian startup ecosystem. How big is it? What's special about it? What we should know?
In terms of the numbers there are roughly 3,000 startups accounted for of Ukrainian origin, or like Ukrainian startups right now. I think that the number is bigger, to be honest, because 3,000 is just not a lot. We see way more companies, but I would say that they can be divided into two categories usually. So first of all, it's the companies that are quite obviously Ukrainian, because they have a lot of Ukrainian exposure, like the teams are largely based in Ukraine, or they have some sales in Ukraine, or they have, I don't know, like the founders are based in Ukraine, for example. But the rest of the companies are usually based abroad. I think that it for a lot of founders emerge from Ukraine, but they originally moved somewhere like to the UK or to the US like 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So it's mostly like a diaspora founders. And those companies, I would say with those companies, it's probably like, I don't know, it's double the number of that. Not sure. So regarding what's happening, I think that first of all, after the war started, a lot of companies were pushed outside of Ukraine, which is probably a good thing for fundraising in a lot of cases. Of course, the war is a terrible thing, but at the same time, for startups, if you are building from day zero on a global market, it's a good thing to have. Helps a lot on the fundraising and scaling. The second part is that a lot of founders temporarily left Ukraine, started settling somewhere in the other countries, Poland included. So that's why it made them probably more exposed to the global fundraising practices, to more funds and more funding, which for them personally is also beneficial. And I would say that these are like the main trends probably, but probably I should elaborate on something more specific.
Right, and which sectors are the most important or most represented? What's the...
Well, first of all, it's general software that can be built and sold globally without a lot of travel. So I would say that this is like one of the categories. It can be both B2B and B2C software, but still it needs to be where you can avoid some big partnerships meetings for a while, avoid living in the US for a while, or UK or some other more expensive countries, let's say. The second part is obviously defense. I heard about a lot of people who left classic industries, like classic B2B SaaS, let's say, to build drones or some software for drones or something related to dual use or something related to just directly defense, or just left to join some company that is doing that already. So that's why I would say that there is definitely an obvious move towards that space too.
Okay. Are there any governmental programs that support this move, or is it just a natural, natural way?
Let me think. I don't know any program specifically, to be honest, because we just disclosure, we do not invest in defense. So that's why we haven't been like digging around quite a lot. So that's why I don't have a lot of knowledge on what's happening there specifically. Not aware about any specific programs except for the Seeds of Bravery, but I'm not sure if they're targeted specifically on defense or they can do defense, health stack, and everything related to that. I know that 1991 is very active. It's a fund and acceleration program right now of Ukrainian origin based in London. So I know that they are very active in defense and dual use and cybersecurity and topics around that. So that's another one, but it's not a governmental one. They are cooperating with European institutions to give some assistance, funding assistance, maybe even funding itself. I'm not sure about that. So yeah, but regarding the general push, like obviously because a lot of people feel like it's a good move to be helpful. It's a good way to be helpful to your country. And if you have this like builder mindset and you already wanted to build something, or you had this entrepreneurial experience before, and the war started, you just see that, okay, this is a good chance for me to build something and make it meaningful.
So this is the way you express initiative.
Thank you for mentioning Seeds of Bravery, because actually I'm very much involved in the company I work for. It's the coordinator of that program, and we don't do defense funding there. It's because it's EU money, and it cannot be spent on defense stuff. So that's let's please give us some more info. But now about the fund perspective, what are are there many active VC funds in Ukraine? Is the number growing? They operate out of Ukraine or other countries like you right now?
I'm thinking. So specifically regarding active Ukrainian VCs, well, let's start with the active Ukrainian VCs. So first of all, it's seed venture partners. It's like SID. It's TA Ventures, but they have like both like the global focus, and they sometimes invested in Ukrainian companies. They don't have any specific focus towards Ukraine. 1991, obviously. So that's why they are. They did a lot of great work on the Ukrainian market, and they are very active in this niche or segment, however you call it. Geek Venture partners, but they are not specifically target Geek Ventures. Sorry, that's my bad. Geek Ventures, they don't specifically invest in Ukrainian startups. They invest in immigrant founders. So obviously they are focused on immigrants from Ukraine. U.Ventures, obviously it's probably the biggest mention. U.Ventures and Horizon Capital. Horizon is like super late stage, with a lot of funding for late stage companies like Series B, Series C, I would say. But U.Ventures does a lot of great work with Ukrainian founders at pre-seed and seed stages. Hopefully I'm not missing anyone. But yeah, I can switch to more international ones, because a lot of Polish VCs, they well, not only Polish, like I would say CE VCs, they are quite active on the Ukrainian market. So, for example, it's Innovo, Smok. Market one is rather more European broadly, so that's why I can't name them probably in this list specifically, but they would probably look into the company with Ukrainian founders if they see it's noteworthy for them. Creatio and one from Czech Republic. Plenty of them, like underline probably, yeah.
Does it mean that like Ukrainian founder has a lot of VC funds that he or she can apply to and get funding? Is the scene feels like complete and strong, or it's still growing?
I think that my perspective on this, like very, I don't know, maybe it's like harsh or not, but I think that for Ukrainian founders specifically, it doesn't matter if you are. If you're a founder, it doesn't matter where you are actually from. It matters for us because we have a specific thesis. It's something that we are telling to our LPs. This is something that we've been fundraising for. But for when you are a founder, you need to just build a company, and that's it. Build a product that is needed internationally. So that's why if you are building something and you are getting international traction, or you have some proofs of concept or proofs of demand coming from the international markets, it doesn't matter if the fund is from the CE or not. It's just probably better access, because we have somewhat similar culture. We are closer. It's easier to meet in person. There is some level of, emotional proximity and geographical proximity to it. But at the same time, if you are a good founder building a global product, you can raise from whomever. You just need to get access to that kind of money. So that's why I wouldn't say that for good founders, there is always an overflow of money, to be honest.
But looking from Polish perspective, and we've been interviewing many Polish VCs, and I have two observations from what you're saying. So first of all, it seems like Ukrainian funders are more international oriented, so they're leaving country and they are just and as you said, establishing operation in UK, US, or whatever, and then there much more international VC interest in Ukraine that I would say is in Poland. Do you see that those two groups of startups, like pure Ukrainian and Ukrainian abroad, this is, you both see them as a part of Ukrainian scene, right? So there's this connection. So these guys leaving, they are not, they're just disconnected. That diaspora is present in this mix.
Yes, sure. But for diaspora, it's always more obvious that they need to build something global, and they already have better access than if you are, if you just got an exposure, if you just moved out of Ukraine, or if you are still in Ukraine.
Okay. Is there any specifically Ukrainian unicorn story that it's inspiring for the other founders? Which companies are the flagship unicorns out of Ukraine?
I would say that it's Grammarly, quite obviously. People.ai, Unstoppable Domains, I would say, to Monobank. Actually, Monobank is one of the recent ones. So they just got a valuation of over 1 billion. Creatio. I would say Creatio is one of them. GitLab, depending on how you define it. Like to be honest, it's been always it's been always an argument with a lot of people, like whether GitLab is a Ukrainian company or not. But there are plenty of companies that are like unicorns or something like very close to that. I would say that that probably. Let me think. Better Me, WellTech. It's more on the app side. Genesis.
Maybe even Restream that we're using here in Venture Center.
Yes, Restream. Yeah, obviously, of course. So it's like, it's quite a lot of, what's surprising is it's always been quite surprising, because Ukraine has produced so many unicorns. Like, I mean, that's they were always kind of like internationally oriented. They sometimes there were a lot of like debates whether this is a Ukrainian company or not Ukrainian, whether it has connections to Ukraine or not. But I think that the biggest way to the best way to evaluate that is to think about it like this. So what do we want from this evaluation? So we are essentially looking if these companies are going to produce people who will build something cool in the future because of entrepreneurial mindset, because they made money through some options, stock options, or due to some other reasons. And whether they will produce people from those companies, will produce new companies, hire Ukrainian people, and make this like create this like mafia of people coming out of tech mafia, basically, as it was with PayPal, as it was in Estonia, and a lot of like other countries. So
the first mafia that will emerge, it would be what, Grammarly mafia, or?
Yeah, that's a good question too, because for now, from what we see, some very cool founders of Ukrainian origin, they emerge not from Ukrainian companies directly, at least in our pipeline. Like, I don't know, like probably we are missing something here. But if we look into our pipeline, it's usually Ukrainian people who worked at Revolut, Ukrainian people who worked at some kind of like a Tesla, Intel, SpaceX, something like that. It's Ukrainian people who worked at Bolt, companies like maybe Palantir, I would say, and some other high growth but smaller startups. So for now, like I would say that out of all Ukrainian companies that can produce some kind of a, let's call it mafia, it can be any of them. But we don't see plenty of alumni in our own pipeline at this point. I don't know why.
No, yeah, exactly. So let's look into it. Why? Because they are not coming back to the places where you look for startups, or is that they create startups outside of your thesis?
I think that it might be dependent on the culture of some of the companies. Like, full disclosure, I haven't worked in any of them, so that's why I don't know what's internally the culture there. So that's why it will be just a guess from my side based on the I don't know, years of experience of talking to founders and why they are building something. So if you worked in a corporate in a company, like let's say like a Revolut or Palantir, my question was always, why did you decide to leave it, having all of those like great bonuses and salaries and everything, working in an amazing company? Everybody wants to be there at this point. And why did you decide to build something on your own? And in most cases, the answer was the following: that we had such a strong entrepreneurial culture internally that you weren't just responsible for the execution most of the time. You were responsible for a lot of thinking, strategizing, brainstorming. You had a lot of ownership of whatever you were doing at Palantir, Revolut, or some other similar companies, and this entrepreneurial culture there motivated those people to leave and do something on their own. So maybe in some of those companies that I mentioned, it's not a bad thing. It's just how it works, that probably people don't have the way to express that way of creativity or whatever. Like I'm not sure about that, but that's just how I've seen like a lot of examples of people doing that, and I've heard almost the same motivation and the same trajectory every time.
But then those
Maybe
people are coming back. Michał, let me just follow up. But those people do come back to Ukraine as well, or get the Ukrainian teams with them, and just engage with this entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah. So regarding them being in Ukraine, so in terms of the founders, a lot of founders, I would say that we saw some statistic. We were preparing for the when we were talking to the LPs, that probably like more than 95% of the founders in Ukraine to some degree left Ukraine. So they either in between somehow, or they currently live abroad, or one person out of the founding team moved somewhere. And the reasons are usually very practical. It's because of the fundraising, and usually it's very hard to fundraise if you are not offline with a potential investor. And other companies who are in close proximity, they will always have a better chance of raising something. So that's why. But the connection to Ukraine is usually the following. So first of all, it's teams largely based in Ukraine. So usually it's like R&D teams or something related to software development, or even to sales. Like it can be actually anything, but on the operational side. The second part is that usually not all of the not the whole founding team is abroad. Like sometimes, yes, if they, if it's already like a Ukrainian diaspora somewhere in the US, they live there for a long time. So that's why they can be based there. But at the same time, it's not like a common thing. Like it will be probably one person. So the connection to Ukraine is strong, like in terms of the where they pay taxes, where they hire taxes. I mean the salary taxes, where they hire people, where they produce the tech talent and grow the tech talent. But being in Ukraine physically, when you're a founder, it can create a lot of challenges on the funding side mostly.
Okay. Interesting, super interesting fact. Okay, Michał, sorry.
No, I just wanted to comment that maybe we don't see that many, something Matthias, because the people working there weren't able to cash out yet from them. Like,
yeah, true.
You don't
That's
see
also
IPOs
true.
of them, right? So it will probably take some time still. But
Yeah.
So I want to understand a bit better your fund. Tell us the origin story of Flyer One Ventures. Tell us more about the fund itself.
Yeah. So before launching Fly One Ventures, we were operationally involved into the company called Genesis. The website is Gentech. And our founding partner, Vital, he co-founded Genesis. And Genesis is like an ecosystem of different companies. It's like a co-founding company or a venture builder that produced over 25 businesses at this point with over 400 million users. It's usually fitness, wellness, online education, entertainment, media, fintech, analytical tools, productivity tools, utilities for mobile, etc. And given this scale and this access to knowledge and a lot of very cool people, talent, understanding of how to actually build the businesses, how to find the right people to do that with them, we decided to launch a fund because we wanted to help the other founders from Central Eastern Europe and Ukraine specifically do something similar. So that's how Fly One was born 7 years ago. Currently, there are 3 partners in the fund, me, Alexei, and founding partner Vital. So we are very different people in terms of the the core traits of character. I would say we probably balance each other pretty good. So Vital, given his huge experience with entrepreneurship and given his basically a co-founder of Genesis, so that's why he's like a high-level entrepreneurship person. So he has a lot of great ideas. He can accumulate a lot of very smart people around him. He has a huge network of people. Obviously, he knows how to what trends make sense right now or not. But usually, it's more on the a strategic side, let's say. Alexei is somebody who is more about the numbers, and we usually joke that he jokes that he is like the most boring person in the fund because he's about the back office of the fund. But of course, this is basically the backbone of our company. So that's why it's it's probably one of the most important parts of our work. And me personally, I'm mostly on the communication, partnerships level, PR, building relationships with the other funds, other organizations, corporates, startups, potential co-investors, investors on the later stages, etc. So I'm the a talking head basically in a lot of cases. So yeah, that's the an overview here. What else can I say?
You invest in what's the typical company that gets you hot and interested? Yes, we want this.
Yeah. So it's pre-seed and seed stages, application layer of software mostly. Founders should be originally from CE region or Ukraine. It's pre-seed seed stages meaning like quite early. So sometimes we even invested at almost idea stage or very close to that, but definitely in some cases pre-revenue, especially with the founders with some excellent track record. Like if they, for example, build a company before they sold it, obviously it would be a very competitive round. So you need to get there as early as possible. So usually building the company from on a global scale from day one or day zero, they need to, like, either if it's a pre-revenue company, pre-traction company, they need to have specific plans to do so. If it's a, they already have some pilot projects, we won't probably look into something like very local. In terms of the like application layer of software, so it's pretty generalistic, I would say, given that we already have the geographical restriction here. It doesn't make sense to restrict ourselves there. But we don't do defense, dual use, everything very deep tech, I would say something like biotech directly or something similar. We also don't do anything in, like, for example, gaming studios. We can't invest there. And we can't invest directly into crypto or like tokenized deals, let's say, just to be more specific on that. But we can probably and will do some deals in the crypto infrastructure. Like if it's a fintech, solution, it might be okay. So it's case by case basically here. So yeah, but in terms of the founders, like actually, I would say that we have a very specific requirements, let's say, or very specific traits of character that we usually look into in people.
What are there?
So it's the sorry, I will. Yeah. So regarding traits of character, usually it's two things. Two general things. Of course, there are way more of them. We designed the whole guide that with the questions and like how to assess that. Basically, like qualitative assessment of the founder's file in Notion that we can share to the other employees in the fund, so everybody is on the same page. But there are two traits of character. The first thing that we are looking for is that the founder should be an animal. This is something that this, like, it's not a methodology, but this accumulates a lot of traits of character in it. So basically, they need to be extremely intrinsically motivated. They need to have healthy levels of aggression, arrogance, maybe. They need to be hungry, like always hungry for whatever reason. Very intuitive in a lot of things, like very much listening to their gut in a lot of cases. So this is like the first part. There are plenty of like sub qualities, I would say, that go into that, but I won't dive deeper.
So animals, but predators, right? Hungry
Not
predators.
koala bears. No koala bears.
That's a good question, actually. Yeah, because like I wouldn't say that it's about being a predator. Like it's not only about being this like carnivore or something. Like it's probably more about the
survival.
Well, I will sound very, very weird right now, but let's take, I don't know, like let's take a horse or a deer. These are amazing animals. Like, I mean, they are very, smart from the gut feeling perspective. They are very perceptive. They need to hunt. They need to be careful. They need to be on the lookout most of the time. They need to be, they are not like actively sitting in the tree and jumping the other animals to eat them. They just, they have a completely different lifestyle.
Yeah, so also free and beautiful, right? So that's
yeah. So it's more about the like hunger and being driven by something rather than, oh, I'm just doing that for fun, or I thought I will try to do that, or I want money. Well, money, money is not the is not the main question here. It's why do you need the money? Why do you want more money?
Okay, so we get the animal part, and what's the second thing that you look for?
No, that's actually about the money part. That's called dollar DNA. I just realized. Dollar DNA. This is something that it's our internal term. Let's say. It's about the founders thinking and making decisions in numbers. So basically, how this decision, how this feature, how this product, how this sale, how this contract, trip, etc., will influence our metrics, our top line and bottom line, and our financials. And they are not making the decisions based on the it's nice to have. They are basing most of their decisions on this will benefit the company.
So smart using of resources.
Yes.
That would be the summary. Okay. It's an interesting way. I think I never heard this approach and defined in a way that you said. It seems like you're using some kind of system like in Amazon. You look for the best people, and then you have a common way of evaluating the founders.
Looking for common traits or something. But how is that approach working out for you? You have what are your biggest investment successes so far?
So success is very, VC. It's in a lot of cases it's on paper. So that's why I will try to be very careful about that. Regarding the exits, like we have a couple of exits that happened to us in the recent years. So first of all, it's obviously Voci. The founder of Voci is currently building a company called Grai that we also invested in. Voci was acquired by Pinterest, I think, in 2021. We were the first check there, so that's why it was quite a good exit for us. The second part is the company called Green Screens. It was acquired by a public logistics company in the US. Also a public one, so for more details, it's probably just better to just Google it. In other cases, like I would probably be more careful because, as I mentioned before, this is TVPI. It's not DPI. It's not something that is set in stone at this point. But we have probably roughly five or six winners at this point in our overall portfolio. Like these are the companies that grew from zero to millions and millions in revenues annually in a pretty short term, like I would say a couple of years or 3-4 years or something like that. A couple of companies that are close to or already valued at 1 billion plus, where we were one of the first checks there. Some of the companies on their way towards that, like something that we mentioned before, like Sunicorns. So a couple of companies like that. So I would say that overall, I'd say that we have 5 to 6 companies that can be described as winners, and around 10, 20 that can potentially get into that category unless something happens to them. So that's the current overview. I'm trying to be very careful about that because we are very conservative with this kind of thing. Like we don't like bragging when we don't have the basis for that, and in a lot of cases it's just on paper.
When I did the research, I found one thing. I think it's easy to brag about it. I've read that over the last 3 or 4 years, none of your companies went under. So none of them closed down. Is it true?
Oh, so let's touch on that. So to give a little bit of context, that was said only about the founders, only about the companies founded by Ukrainian founders. So we have 26 or so of them at this point. And the question there probably was that, because I remember we had a couple of media asking us about that. So the question there was like, what happened to the startups with Ukrainian founders in our portfolio, or something like that. And this is true. Nobody closed down. One company got acquired in the meantime, but yeah. So it wasn't like something like we liquidated a startup. But in total, I think that we had roughly, let me think, roughly 9 write-offs at this point.
Okay, so out of 90 investments, right?
Yes, yes.
You have 90 investments in your portfolio.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, but honestly, I don't think that is a good thing to be like happy about. Like this is something that we've
Part
been.
of the game.
Yeah. No. I mean, probably it's the other perspective. We are always thinking like it's probably. Is it okay that we don't have that many write-offs? Like we probably should have a little bit more. Like we should probably have like 20-30%. And
that means that you risk too little, or?
yeah, probably we should. It's been like a conversation internally and some philosophical, I don't know, philosophical conversations with the other partners in many cases for years now. Should we probably we are too risk averse? Probably we didn't take enough risks in the past. So
or
that's
maybe
why.
it's just people can be unhappy about absolutely anything, and this is
Yes, that's the motto of our fund. We are always unhappy. Like we need to improve something always.
when you invest, are you usually the leading investor, the only investor, or you cooperate with the other investors?
Yeah. So in the previous fund, so we just this summer we announced a new fund of 50 mil backed by IFC and the BRD, just for context.
It's
So
number
in the
5,
previous,
yeah?
yes,
It's the
yes.
fifth one. Okay.
Yeah. So in the previous installments, we led the rounds selectively. We could lead, co-lead, or follow, but in most cases, we followed. It was due to some capital restrictions. It was due to some other things. Like it was because we mostly led deals in the consumer or consumer-related spaces. So that's why, because this is obviously our biggest expertise here. In the current fund, in the new one, we changed it a little bit. So we can, at the same time, we can be flexible, lead, co-lead, or follow. But at the same time, we would prefer to lead a little bit more deals than before, percentage-wise. Because we noticed in the previous fund that the biggest successes or the best results usually, or in most cases, they emerged from when we cooperated with the startup quite a lot, and we had a lot of time for them to help them in any way if they had any requests to us. So that's why we believe that in the new fund, we would better invest into a smaller number of startups, have a more concentrated portfolio, be more invested, well, monetary speaking and emotionally speaking, into the companies, and have more time to help everyone and each of them.
So you're hands-on investor. So you're usually involved with your investments.
Yeah, we are involved with our investments, but we don't push anything on them. We just we make sure that they know that they can come to us with a lot of requests. We introduce them to almost all of the operational team members immediately, so that they know what kind of help they can get. But we won't be like, you need to change that, everything,
Okay.
like build a different product.
How your thesis or your approach is influenced by your origin with Genesis? Because as far as I understand, this scale, it's mostly B2C, right? That's B2C products. Is it something that you look more and B2B just a side dish, or this is not the case?
No, this is not the case. In terms of the thesis, it's not the case because first of all, B2C companies are way more complicated than it seems on the surface. It's so to understand better why it's so hard for even very good and talented people to build B2C product, which is used by millions, is because every B2C product in a way competes for our 24 hours. It's just competing for human attention on a daily basis. And if you are building something in mobile app space, let's say something like super useful, like let's say it's a fitness wellness app, you are still competing with, I don't know, like you are competing with YouTube and Netflix and Farfetch, because somebody just, or Pinterest, somebody can scroll Pinterest for hours apparently, or TikTok or something else. So it's it's constant competition for the time of people. So your competition is not just directly with similar apps. It's everything else around that. So that's why it's a little bit harder to find very good companies there. You need to sift through more companies, and you will probably invest in one or two good B2C companies in a year, if you are lucky. So that's why it's mixed. It's application layer of software. It's something that we understand, like software in general, products that can be scaled, that can be growing without a lot of like hands-on approach, without a lot of hand-holding. But Genesis' influence is the biggest on the operational help. The idea that we needed to help the founders, and we need to have like an operational team internally, it came from that place, because we knew that we will be helping a lot. We needed somebody to handle that, somebody to be the bridge between our network, some of our LPs who built the companies before, successful companies before, and the startups that we invest in.
So you mentioned before that you also saw that the companies where you spend more time with them were more engaged, performed better. So what specific type of support you offer to your portfolio companies? What is it? What's the special thing that you give them?
Yeah. So regarding the so first of all, hiring is probably one of the most requested helps out there. In our case, we've hired probably 300 or so people in the last couple of years for our portfolio startups. In most cases, it's like senior positions, mid-level positions, and C-level positions. So yeah, hiring is probably top thing for us, because it's the well, obviously you need good talent to build something great. So that's why you can't do it without the talent at this point. The second part is growth. Growth, it's everything related to marketing, go-to-market, testing new hypotheses, entering new markets, launching some new products internally, and shipping them to the audience. So we have people who work with our portfolio startups hands-on for a while, like for a month or two, to help them, set the vector, test some things out in a very fast manner, give some additional, hands to do so. But afterwards, it's less hand holding and more like just giving the direction, or getting them in touch with the relevant people, hiring the right people for them in this domain, etc. So we don't babysit the companies. It's not something that we would like to do. The third part is content. So previously it used to be PR, but PR shifted a lot in the recent couple of years. to content. So that's why we help our founders become more visible, more public, get in touch with the right media, not only tech media, but just media in general, if they want to pitch them to some conferences, to some events, to some podcasts, if they are asking for that, making their social media more active, helping them become more visible to the investors prior to fundraising. And stuff like that, and a lot of other things. Like it can be a lot of operational stuff, administrative, consultancy, all the on the legal part, finances, taxes, etc. So, and like the last part that I'm not the least, but it's quite obvious, is of course the help with the fundraising. So we like do introductions, sometimes help with the DAX, help with the financials, and putting everything in order if asked to do so.
I would like to come back to the beginning of our interview and you moving to Warsaw, because that implies cooperation with Polish funds, but also implies that you're looking for Polish startups. Is it the case? And if so, can you tell us some hot takes? What's special about Polish startups? Why they should apply to you? And what is the way to get money out of you?
Hot takes. I don't have hot takes. Like I've been to Warsaw so many times before I moved here. It wasn't like when I moved here, it didn't feel like I probably knew Warsaw already much better than most of the cities that I've been to, just because I traveled quite a lot here. So that's why I don't specifically
we're probably fishing for something like controversial, like Polish founders are lazy or whatever.
Let me think. Yeah, I know, but it's not very controversial. I think that it's something that it's been said quite a lot. Poland is a growing economy. It's a big country, relatively big population. So for a lot of founders, when they start building something, it can feel like a very warm and fuzzy path. Like it's just, let's probably tackle the Polish market first, because it's quite obvious. Like you are thinking, we have money here. Why don't we just make some early traction here and then move to some other country? I don't think that it's usually a good approach, for several reasons. Like in most cases, founders just get stuck on their local market because it's easier for them emotionally, maybe, or in general, like language wise, or in some other aspects. It's just probably easier for them to get clients and earnings there, and they are stressed out to try something new, like especially if it's the US, like because the US is just, it's a completely different world. Like it's different universe out there. So it gets very stressful for them to switch to a different market afterwards, and that's why they get stuck, grow to some decent numbers, like a Series A, raise Series A funding, don't have enough funding at at that scale in CE region, start talking to the later stage funds from some, I don't know, UK, let's say, and UK funds are like, well, you need to have international traction. Sorry. That's why it's like, it's something that we've seen a lot with Ukrainian founders, and it makes total sense. I understand why people make that kind of decision, but I think that it's probably better to scale faster to some other countries and then go to Poland with already made product. And if you want to have some local traction, please do, but later.
But you already have some Polish investment, right?
Yeah, we have a couple of companies, but to be honest, like we are not very Poland heavy. Like I think that we've been more. We are pretty heavy on Ukrainians, on Belarusians who obviously live abroad. Plenty of super talented people come from this from Belarus, and they usually moved out of country many years ago. But we are not very heavy on Polish founders, to be honest.
Okay.
Maybe it will change
we want
after
to.
No, you said, you set clear global ambitions, and you said, how do you select great funders? It's up for our viewers, to just do their job, and that's fine. That's fine. Okay, Elena, I think, Michał, I think we are ready for our 3 questions, right?
I'm so scared.
No, not scared. Like, just the only thing we ask is like to give your first thing that comes up to your mind, top of mind answers. So I'll start with the first one, maybe. This is like a super simple. You already touched it a little bit, I think. What's your unique value as investor for the startups? Why should they come to you specifically?
But to Elena, not to the fund.
Yes, not to the fund, the person.
I know how to see hidden potential and people, and can help open it up through very deep conversations, usually.
All right.
Nice. Interesting. Okay, the second one. The second one is about anti-portfolio. What's your greatest miss? You were too late. You didn't invest. You invested too little.
So there was one company. It's in the in the space of telehealth and e-commerce. Its name is Phoenix. It's focused on Canadian market, so it's not like very popular here. But we were looking into them when they were at 12 million valuation. And it didn't pass the investment committee, and then in a year they grew immensely and raised 50 million Series A. The round size was 50 million. So yeah, that was a pretty fast miss, to be honest. Like, you just saw it happen in the real time after passing on them on the investment committee. One of the I think that I would call that, because I took it very painfully.
Okay. But it was Ukrainian startup?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't with the Ukrainian founders.
Okay, and the last one. This is usually the most fun. What's the thing that you believe in that most of the other people don't share? What's the contrarian view that you hold?
Could be investing, but not only.
Could be about anything.
I think that there are no normal people in tech who either want to invest in startups or want to build something, especially among successful people. Like, there is something not I wouldn't say broken or something, like, I don't want to use that. Those are very negative words, but there are usually some cracks in people who are, a completely normal person doesn't wake up every day and thinks like, oh, I want to spend all of my life savings to suffer for 5 years, and then probably make a lot of money, and then probably raise even more money and make even more money, and still suffer because I'm not pleased with anything. And I am dreaming about that. Like, there is no normal person out there that would be, doing that. So that's why I think that there are some cracks in our that people who are lured into this space. There is something very weird about us in most cases.
They are special, right? very special.
I think now I'm getting this animal part even better.
Yeah, I mean
that's
yeah,
perfect.
that's probably true.
Elena, thank you for your answers, not only to the last 3 questions, but to the whole interview. I think we got a feeling of Ukrainian and how they're, I think, different in a way from Polish ecosystem, but also similar in some ways. So thank you for sharing this knowledge with our viewers, and we wish you good investments in CE, but also in Poland.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thanks.